July 12, 2001. Passengers and crew are enjoying the last stop on their 9-day voyage. 39-year-old Rachel Park is loving the rest and relaxation with her son before they head home to Minot, North Dakota. A marketer who graduated from Penn State University, Rachel has always been the life of the party. But little does she know that this will be the last party she ever lights up. Because this is the night that Rachel Park will disappear without a trace. With evidence showing signs of a struggle and several suspicious individuals on board the ship, what happened to Rachel Park? On July 3rd, 2001, Rachel Park and her son Jeremy disembarked from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on a 9-day Caribbean tour on a massive ship with over 2,000 passengers and 900 crew members. Friends and loved ones see their families off for the trip of a lifetime of island hopping through blue turquoise waters. A ship almost 3 football fields in length, this vessel has all the amenities. But unfortunately for Rachel, lurking on this monstrosity is someone who will spell her doom. Hailing from Minot, North Dakota, Rachel and her husband, Steve Park, had just started a natural wellness business.
Things are looking pretty good for Rachel. She's just started this new health and wellness company with her husband.
They sell natural health products, vitamins. So in order to get the business up and running, she needs to be putting herself out there and getting lots of contacts and being able to sell the product widely. So the more people she knows, the better for her business.
It seems like it's going to be a great success.
Rachel fostered 2 children, and their adoptions have finally been legalized by the courts. And with her new business venture taking off, this 39-year-old marketer seems to have it all. But with over $375,000 in debt, the Parks are anxiously awaiting news from bankruptcy adjusters. And Rachel has an upcoming day in court where she's the plaintiff in an ongoing child custody battle with her first husband. But then, a lucky break. Rachel's win of an all-expense-paid cruise could not have come at a better time, giving Rachel the much-needed break she deserves. It's also good for her health to rest from the stresses of her home life.
She got a cruise as a gift. She's on the open ocean with her son. What could be better?
It was really exciting, I know that. I mean, I was quite little, but it was just like out of nowhere. I know my mom was really excited to go because she went on a trip and she really needed to get away. But yeah, I didn't go. My dad stayed back to take care of us. My brother went, though.
Rachel Park is having the ideal cruise experience, taking in the sights and singing karaoke with family on board.
My mom had a really nice singing voice. She was the life of the party. When I was younger, she would always have these big karaoke parties with a bunch of friends, and she loved showing off her voice.
She even wins a snorkeling treasure hunt. This cruise is just what Rachel needs to start fresh as she and her husband Steve get started on their new business. The cruise ship provides the perfect captive audience to drum up sales for her and Steve's new business. And she's not shy about talking about the health and wellness benefits of her products. On trips like this, Rachel takes down as many names as she can, using them to network and drive sales.
One of the things I've always remembered is my mom was notorious note taker. She would always have her notepad.
She carried this little notebook around with her everywhere she went, where she got people's names and addresses in, hoping that they might be good contacts for her business later on.
So Rachel carried this notebook with her that she used to record the people that she met, their details, so that she could reach out to them later on. This is before we all had cell phones and the technology that made it so much easier to keep contact information. So she had this notebook that she recorded people's names and numbers in. For a person to carry a notebook around and immediately write a person's name down upon meeting them, it's probably a little bit unusual. So this is different from what we would normally see.
Rachel also enjoys the bingo on board the ship. She's already won twice, and the same crew member has been calling the numbers on both of her wins. Rachel asks him to sit with her on the final night of the cruise's 10 p.m. game for luck, since his shift would be over by then.
Since she's doing so well at bingo, it's natural that she develop a bit of an affection for the man calling the bingo numbers. She thinks he's her good luck charm. So she actually invites him to sit with her at the last bingo game when he's not working.
She makes plans to meet her son for that same game. But there's an unexpected twist awaiting Rachel and her family. In the meantime, Rachel continues loving the nightlife on the ship and relishes the opportunity to meet new people and, most importantly, enjoy some time away. On this trip, one of those new people was taking her friendliness a little too far. Throughout the trip, Rachel is regularly being approached by the same man. He's not able to take the hint that Rachel isn't interested in his advances.
From what I understand, there was apparently someone harassing my mom on the ship.
Cruise ship flies a flag of the country in which it's registered, and those are the laws that it typically is governed by. When it's traveling in close proximity to another country, in their waters, they would typically follow the rules of that particular country. As is alluded to here, there were certain laws enacted specific to particular crimes, especially when we're talking about U.S. citizens. The FBI is very interested in having specific information on their own citizens on cruise ships.
Despite being told in no uncertain terms to leave her alone, this harasser won't let up.
And she really tried to get security to intervene.
The security guard informs Rachel that there is not much they can do about the man. They tell her to stay away from him.
When you're being harassed by someone on a cruise ship, there's literally no escape. There's nowhere you can go. It's totally horrific when you think of it. This woman was harassed by this man, and there was absolutely no place she could go to get away from him.
Rachel finally arrives at the 10 p.m. bingo game, showing up early as she's still excited from her previous bingo win. There, she's supposed to meet up with her lucky bingo caller and her son, Jeremy. She roams around the casino looking for a good seat. And luckily, there's a lot of empty seats. Not worried about getting a good spot anymore, Rachel decides to get some air on the deck. Mysteriously, a security camera on the deck Rachel steps onto is covered, blocking the view of any events that may transpire. And as she enjoys some air before her next bingo game, she remains unaware that this is the last breath of fresh air she'll ever take, leaving her family baffled as Rachel seemingly vanishes without a trace. 39-year-old Rachel Park and her son Jeremy are on a 9-day cruise. After what many would consider the ideal vacation, the mother-son duo is about to settle down for one last night on the ship. An entrepreneur from Minot, North Dakota, Rachel is busy meeting people and gathering contacts to support the new supplement business she and her husband Steve have started. But that's when things take a turn for the worse. And Rachel mysteriously disappears, never to be seen again by her family.
She was supposed to meet with my brother to play one last game of bingo. It was the last night, but she never showed.
When Rachel's son shows up to the casino, expecting to meet up with her for the 10 p.m. bingo game, Rachel's not there, and neither is the bingo caller they were expecting to see as well. Jeremy asks around if anyone has seen his mother. A cruise ship regular tells him that he saw her at 9:30, but doesn't know where she is. It's around this time that Gabriel Mahone, a doctor from Florida, holidaying with his fiancée and 10 friends, is startled by what he sees on the deck. Visible signs of a struggle are apparent to him. He sees Rachel's beaded black purse torn on the ground. Its beads are scattered. A cup is overturned, and pages from Rachel's notepad are blowing around. Security arrives on the scene and immediately questions Gabriel. Most disconcerting, Gabriel points out, is the map covering the security camera.
There's this mysterious passenger, this Gabriel, who just happens to notice a lot of crime scene evidence. He finds Rachel's purse torn apart with the beads everywhere on the deck. He finds pages from her notebook. He finds that the security camera has been covered with a piece of ship's map. So he almost becomes obsessed with resolving Rachel's disappearance and finding out more about this crime scene. It's almost like he wants to play amateur detective.
The investigator is likely not going to be the first person at the scene. What they're seeing is not necessarily the way it was when the incident took place. But what they're seeing is the result of anything that had been moved or tampered with. It's a snapshot of what may have taken place, but an investigator needs to be aware that it may not exactly be the way it was left. People on a busy cruise ship may have walked through the scene many times before somebody came across it. Somebody may have moved something intentionally. Items move in the wind. Just because you're seeing it for the first time doesn't mean that's the actual scene that was left behind.
After excusing Gabriel from the scene, the security officers gather items from the deck. Inside Rachel's purse, they find money and her ID. One of the officers takes Rachel's handbag to the ship's banker, the purser's office. A consummate doer, Gabriel can't stand still as he tells his friends what he's just seen on one of the ship's designated smoking decks. Around 10:30 p.m., Gabriel returns to the deck with Rachel's son Jeremy, who is in shock, to see what's developed with the investigation. However, most of the scene has been cleaned up. He starts noticing things the highly trained security officers missed. There is a note tucked into the life ring. An emergency probe is ajar, and 20 feet away, he sees a pen. Instead of welcoming the help, a security officer corners Gabriel, putting him in suspicion. After some initial tension, the officers call in a search for Rachel.
What's interesting about this Gabriel fellow is he actually noticed details on the crime scene that trained investigators and the crew didn't notice. How did he know they were there? So of course he becomes a person of interest himself, because it's quite common for people who have committed crimes to insert themselves in the investigation. Criminals have this innate curiosity. Is it all going to unfold afterward? And oftentimes they also are hoping that being so helpful, they're going to throw the police off their scent.
When the fact that somebody might be missing is brought to the attention of the crew, then typically the captain or whoever is in charge at the time will make efforts to call for that person, asking for that specific person to present themselves to help locate them.
Will the passenger from room 3416 please report to the purser's office? The passenger from room 3416, please report to the purser's office.
Now under suspicion himself, Gabriel can't believe it. Feeling like something is off, he once again returns to the scene of the crime. Something about the way security was acting didn't sit well with him. Rachel's son, Jeremy, is in shock, hearing that his mother is missing. He just saw her a few hours ago. For him, this is a nightmare come to life. Crew tell him that some of her belongings have been found on the smoking deck. This is a puzzling detail for Jeremy. His mother never smoked. Gabriel briefly talks with Jeremy, assuring him things will work out. Not a moment later, his confidence shakes as he discovers some drops of blood on the deck. Jeremy informs Gabriel about the man who was harassing his mother. Despite his and his mother's attempt to alert security, they are told by security that it's not their problem. Shortly after the Coast Guard arrives on the ship, a cabin search is issued. Using a photo of Rachel, the ship's security searches the entire ship for her.
When someone goes missing on a cruise ship, it's regular, normal practice to do a cabin-to-cabin search. So that was also done in this case. They had a photo of Rachel to go by to see if anyone had seen her, but they also had evidence of foul play on the deck, including blood spatter.
Passengers these days have electronic cards, and they have ways of tracking whether or not they're on the ship or off the ship. So if they know that the person is on the ship, but they're not accounted for, they're not answering to the calls, they can't find them in a room-to-room search, then they may have to make the assumption that they've gone overboard.
Gabriel Mahone returns to the crime scene to see if any news of Rachel has surfaced. To his horror, the last place she could be traced to is still open to the public. He implores the security who are now on the scene to rope off the area and preserve any evidence that may still be there. The ship's officers dismiss his concerns and tell him to mind his own business.
You may say that Gabriel was overinvested in this thing, but I think he had a point to be really upset that people were walking through this crime scene. Everyone knows that crime scenes get compromised very, very easily, and the only people that should ever have access to them are the investigators, and even then, as few people as possible. And in this case, people were just allowed to walk through it constantly. All of Rachel's belongings, the beaded purse, the notebook paper, they were just picked up by hand.
The U.S. Coast Guard officers and ship security are having no luck with their search for Rachel. It's been over 3 hours since Rachel was first reported missing. The Coast Guard insists to the captain that the ship turn back and assist in the search and rescue. With each second that passes, the possibility of Rachel surviving becomes grimmer. With signs of a struggle, the family fears the worst. Knowing that Rachel was harassed on the cruise by another passenger is also disconcerting. Does he have something to do with Rachel's disappearance? What about the bingo caller that she was supposed to meet? Rachel Park and her adult son, Jeremy, are on a cruise vacation of the Caribbean. But while on board the ship, Rachel goes out on the deck and seemingly vanishes. The Coast Guard arrives and leads a cabin-to-cabin search, which comes up empty. Investigators begin looking into people of interest. Among them is a man who harassed her earlier on the ship. And details begin to surface about the meeting she had with the bingo caller the night she disappeared. As the investigation continues, one conclusion arrived at is that Rachel may have jumped overboard on her own. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard orders the captain to turn the vessel around and begin a search for Rachel in the water below.
I know for a fact that my mom would never commit suicide because things were going so well. She was actually in a good place and really happy, and I just can't see that ever happening.
Rachel was seen ordering drinks at the bar. The bartenders take note of how many drinks passengers have throughout the day, and the amount on her tab is 10, quite a lot for a slight woman. With this new information in hand, another theory arises. Maybe Rachel accidentally fell overboard. But why did a non-smoker go to the smoking deck? Was she with someone? Is it possible, as the ship's security contend, that Rachel Park of Minot, North Dakota, committed suicide that fateful day, July 12th, in 2001? Did she see the camera and cover it up, not wanting any more attention from the world, tear up her notepad and destroy her purse? Was the stress of her upcoming bankruptcy and custody hearing too much for her to bear? Did she have too much to drink, and a drunken rage caused her to do the unthinkable?
People suffer traumatic events in their lives, and you never know what's going to drive somebody to take their own life. Bankruptcy is something that's very serious in a person's life, and if they feel they're going to lose everything, then it's a reason to consider that they may have taken their own life. Divorce, marital problems, those are all things that are taken into account to determine whether somebody may be in a position to want to take their own life if they're under severe stress.
But the facts don't back that up. Yes, she was involved in a bankruptcy proceeding and a child custody settlement, but both of those were about to be decided in her favor, and she knew that. Not only that, she just started this new business with her husband, and they'd adopted 2 children. That's not the mindset of someone that's going to kill themselves.
There was no reason to believe that she would take her own life.
Jeremy is also adamant that suicide isn't the case. He tells them to drop the theory completely, bringing up the issue of the man who was harassing his mother throughout the cruise. In his opinion, that's the most likely person to have caused her harm.
So cruise ships would have safety regulations such as standard rail heights, which is about 42 inches on most cruise ships. And there would be other physical barriers that would prevent people from falling overboard. So to go over accidentally would be very, very difficult. So a person must then either have to intentionally climb over a rail or past a barrier or be pushed over such a barrier by somebody else, which would indicate either foul play or suicide.
Several times on the ship, Rachel is accosted by an unknown assailant. Despite attempts to alert security officials, it's unclear whether an investigation into the unruly passenger took place. But now, Rachel's missing, and this man seems like a likely suspect.
On these floating cities that are cruise ships, people can be especially vulnerable. One of the things that isn't talked about enough is how many sexual assaults occur on cruise ships, but it is something that happens, and it happens a lot more than it should.
Gabriel Mahone, a doctor from Florida, is distraught over how security doesn't seem to be taking this seriously. Despite pointing out the covered security camera, the torn notepad, the destroyed purse, along with the dislodged emergency strobe and flecks of blood, the crime scene area is still open to the public. The experience isn't lining up to what Gabriel believes should be a professional investigation of Rachel's disappearance. Little does Gabriel Mahone know that he is a suspect in this case. While he's trying to help the security downstairs, they have found out his room number and are searching it for clues to his involvement in Rachel's disappearance. But if Gabriel is a suspect, why would he be trying to help security solve the case?
In various crimes, we see instances where the perpetrator of the crime comes back to the scene in some way, whether it be at a fire scene where the person that set the fire is standing in the crowd watching something burn, or if a murderer was to try to assist with an investigation by continuously offering help and suggestions despite being asked to mind his own business. Sometimes they think they're just so smart that the police need them, when really all they're doing is opening up a door for the police to look at them as a suspect.
Rachel Park is missing, and when looking at all the information that's been collected, there are now several potential suspects. Rachel Park had already won twice at bingo on this 9-day cruise. She'd arranged to have the bingo caller, who was calling the numbers in both games she won, to sit with her at the 10 p.m. game of July 12, 2001. The night she goes missing. When Rachel's son Jeremy comes to meet her at the 10 p.m. game, neither she nor the bingo caller she was supposed to meet are there. Is there something going on that would cause the ship's security to be so dismissive of all the evidence? There is no denying that Rachel's black beaded purse is found torn apart, and her notepad is found with the pages strewn about. Why don't the highly trained security officers notice the covered camera, the dislodged emergency probe, or the flecks of blood?
Something had happened to my mom, and it seemed fairly obvious. From what I was told, it was like a crime scene in a movie.
But there's a peculiar detail in regard to Rachel's purse that was found. It was wiped clean of fingerprints and placed back on the deck.
There's a lot of questions about this case, and it kept getting stranger and stranger. Why was the purse removed from the crime scene and then wiped clean and put back where it was before? Why were no photographs ever taken of this crime scene? That's one of the first things you do when a crime is committed, is take a photograph so you have that lasting document. None of these things were done. It's just bizarre.
So when steps are taken to intentionally not record potential evidence at a crime scene, an investigator would automatically be concerned about somebody trying to hide their tracks. In this particular case, the fact that the purse was removed from the deck is clearly something that would be of interest to an investigator.
More questions emerge. Why did it take over 3 hours for the ship to turn around to look for Rachel? It was not until after the Coast Guard officers arrived that a cabin-to-cabin search was ordered of the ship. Was it at the security's urging that this was a suicide? Who would know what camera to cover unless they had a plan to lure a victim to that spot? And what about the physical evidence and signs of a struggle? Can that rule out an accidental fall? With suicide out of the question, 3 possible scenarios remain in play for Rachel's disappearance. Investigators have to decide if it was murder with the harasser, the bingo caller, or the overly interested passenger. All potential suspects. "39-year-old marketer and entrepreneur Rachel Park of Minot, North Dakota, has gone missing on the last day of a cruise that she won. Joining her is her son Jeremy. Rachel was seen ordering drinks at the bar, and the amount on her tab is 10. Is it possible, as the ship's security contend, that Rachel Park committed suicide? Is there something going on that would cause the ship's security to be so dismissive of all the evidence? There is no denying that Rachel's black beaded purse is found torn apart, and her notepad is found with the pages strewn about. Why don't the highly trained security officers notice the covered camera? It was not until after Coast Guard officers arrived that a cabin-to-cabin search was ordered of the ship. Who would know what camera to cover unless they had a plan to lure a victim to that spot? Investigators have to decide if it was murder with the harasser, the bingo caller, or the overly interested passenger. Rachel's son reports that his mother was approached by the same man repeatedly with unwanted advances. This harasser wouldn't let up, forcing Rachel to go to security several times. However, security refused to step in, telling Rachel to deal with it or avoid him altogether. Unfortunately for Rachel, this man harassed her again and again. Is it possible that the harasser attacked Rachel on the cruise? Did the constant rejection from the apple of his eye cause this man to commit murder? Did he have a drunken obsession that went too far and led to Rachel Park's demise?
Rachel's son had pointed out that there was a man on board that had been a problem for Rachel from the very beginning. He'd harassed her so much that a lot of people on the ship had noticed, and he'd even been warned to leave her alone. Could this harasser, this obsessed man, have something to do with Rachel's disappearance?
Rachel met a lot of people. She made a point of meeting a lot of people on the ship, and this one gentleman refused to take no for an answer, it appeared. He may have taken it more personally than she intended. He'd already been reported as having been bothering her, so we want to know who he is and what his intention was with her.
Despite what was an obvious motive, the harasser's story of being in the karaoke bar at the time of Rachel's disappearance checks out with security footage and multiple witnesses. It couldn't have been him that murdered Rachel. He is released by investigators who have to look elsewhere to find the true culprit. Investigators continue looking for answers. They know that the more time passes, the harder it will be to get to the bottom of the case. With suicide out of the question and the harasser released by authorities, there are two remaining suspects, the bingo caller and Gabrielle Mahone. Gabriel Mahone, a doctor from Florida, is on a cruise with his fiancée and a group of friends when he stumbles upon a crime scene. Having a logical mind, Gabriel investigates the scene almost obsessively. He visits the scene of Rachel's disappearance, documented 6 times. He also seems to have an intimate knowledge of the entire crime scene, noticing small details that not even the ship's highly trained security officers have seen.
From what I understand, this man was trying to really push the security crew to do the right thing, but they just kept pushing him to the side.
Ship security finds his behavior so suspicious that they have his cabin searched before anyone else's. Is it possible that Gabrielle had set up the whole crime to suit some sick game or notion? On the surface, Gabriel appears to be a model witness and passenger. So is it even plausible that he was the mastermind behind this devious plot to kill Rachel? And why her? Was she only in the wrong place at the wrong time? Did Gabriel place all the evidence to set up a cruel game, only to be disappointed when the ship's security team seemed unable to determine foul play? This is Gabriel Mahone's first ever cruise. His alibi includes his fiancée and a few close friends. All attest to his innocence, placing him with the group at the time of Rachel's disappearance. He is what he says he is, a concerned passenger with a keen eye and earnest desire to right a wrong.
Turns out he just wanted to do the right thing, but he actually ended up being a suspect, and that almost ruined his life.
In the end, Gabriel Mahone offers to take a lie detector test, but is told it's unnecessary as he is released of any wrongdoing. Gabriel can hold his head high, knowing that he did all he could to assist with the investigation, despite being under suspicion. After Gabriel is exonerated, investigators are left with one potential suspect. But was it actually him? The bingo caller was calling the numbers on both of Rachel's wins. She asked him to sit with her on the final night of the cruise's 10 p.m. game for luck, since his shift would be over by then. Planning on meeting her son there, she was coming early to get a good seat, but neither she nor the bingo caller show up.
Who is this bingo caller? What do we really know about him? One thing's for certain, he shouldn't have been so buddy-buddy with Rachel. Cruise ship employees are supposed to be friendly to the passengers, but they're not supposed to get personally involved. Most cruise lines actually have a policy against that kind of interaction.
Yeah, Rachel seemed to do well at the bingo table and seemed to have a good rapport with the bingo caller. By all accounts, she just wanted to have a friendly evening with him, but she did single him out as somebody that she wanted to spend time with. They had plans to attend the bingo game together. When neither of them showed up, one would assume they were together, wherever it is they were.
Why are the crew of the ship in such a rush to call this a suicide? Is there a part of this case that hasn't yet been revealed? The crime scene evidence is contaminated by initial investigators removing items by hand, and it's still assumed that no crime scene photos are taken. It takes over 2.5 hours to call a cabin-to-cabin search, and 3 hours to turn the ship around to search for Rachel. This is only done at the Coast Guard's direction. Such a delay significantly reduces any success of a search and rescue operation.
It's 3 hours before they can confirm she's not on board and decide to turn the ship around. By that point, it's probably too late.
So we understand it took 3 hours to search the ship, at which point they would have believed to have gone overboard. The ship would have turned around, and then they spent 16 hours with airplanes and boats and the Coast Guard searching where they believe she may have gone overboard, covering over 800 square miles, and they weren't able to find her body. Well, it's unlikely a security camera becomes covered up by accident. Somebody had to cover the camera. Likely the somebody is the person responsible for Rachel's disappearance or death. It's possible Rachel did this herself to cover up a suicide. Maybe she believed she wouldn't get the insurance payout. It could be proved that she took her own life. Nobody knows who covered up the camera.
With control of the scene of the incident, the ship's security waits until 4 a.m. to cordon off the area from other passengers. Further to this, an eyewitness says a crew member is being led off the ship once in port in handcuffs.
Could this be the mysterious bingo caller? We have no idea.
Because this is an incident involving an American citizen, the FBI arrives and begins conducting their investigation. The bingo caller is caught lying by the FBI about his whereabouts several times. Does all this circumstantial evidence point to him? Is the bingo caller misinterpreting Rachel's friendliness as something more? Is her inquisitive nature being read as romantic interest? Did he cover the camera expecting a romantic engagement and didn't want to get caught? Rachel would usually never go to a smoking deck. As a non-smoker who works in the health and wellness field, she hates the habit. And the ensuing struggle is the result of the bingo caller forcing himself on Rachel. Things turn violent quickly. Fighting for her life, it's too late for her to get help. But the evidence is only circumstantial, with nothing physically placing him at the scene of the crime. The bingo caller is let go by authorities, even though he seems to have the strongest motive to cause her harm. Rachel Park is declared dead in July of 2002. To this day, her family still does not know what happened to her. The ship's security and the FBI lean towards suicide or a tragic accident. With an upcoming bankruptcy and child support hearing looming, it seems to be plausible. But Rachel's family disputes that unequivocally. Both of these court cases are about to end positively for Rachel and Steve Park.
To this day, no one, my family, no one knows what happened to my mom. And it robbed my whole life with her.
Was it the bingo caller who was being led off the boat in handcuffs? We will never know, with nothing to place the crew member being led off the boat and the bingo caller as the same person. This evidence is anecdotal at best. He was never charged and is innocent until proven guilty. Only the ship's security and the FBI know what's on the security cameras, what they show us and what they don't. To get to the bottom of her mysterious disappearance, Steve Park sues the cruise line under the premise that they were negligent in regards to the monitoring of the security cameras. The answers he seeks, he never receives. The cruise line settles out of court to help him raise the kids he and Rachel adopted.
My family and I never got an answer as to what happened to my mom.
Rachel had so much going for her. She had a new start planned. Everything seemed like she was turning a corner. Things were going to get better. How sad is it that she never got the chance to experience those things? She never got the chance to enjoy her new life, her new business, and those 2 adopted children. We might never know what happened to her. Because of the way this case was handled, sadly, it may always be a mystery. The facts surrounding Rachel's disappearance are either missing, uninvestigated, or simply gone.
It took her over 6 hours to actually cordon off the scene. Who knows how many people went through that scene, may have dropped things there. They may have dropped their own DNA at the scene. They may have taken away items that were at the scene. There's just no way to know. There's no forensic evidence. The purse is turned over to the security personnel at the scene. It still has money in it. It still has her identification in it. I don't think the purse had ever been turned back to Rachel's property. The odds of it being solved at this point with the lack of physical evidence, the lack of any video evidence, is very slim. Really, all we can hope for is that somebody comes forward that has information about what actually happened on board that ship.
No one knows who did it or why. Only the cruise line and the FBI know what the evidence shows. Over 15 years later, it's impossible to say what happened. What we do know is that someone out there has blood on their hands, with their conscience as their only judge.